Yesterday, for the races that were decided, we have two important mayor's races that are still pending in Mogadishu, Minnesota. It used to be called Minneapolis. I think it went by that name. It's been a minute. And in Seattle, which will be interesting because they somewhat mirror the Mamdani-Cuomo matchup in New York City, although there really is no Cuomo. There's just sort of Mamdani and Mamdani light square-offs in Minnesota and Washington State. But for those that are in on the Eastern Seaboard, the message was what you sort of expect. It's a referendum on Trump. You had Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey talking about Lady Liberty and no kings. An interesting message on the immigration issue, particularly when you look at the exit polling in New York, where immigration voters actually went against Mamdani by 26 points. It was cost of living where he dominated. And Spanberger in Virginia pretended to be pragmatic. Well, she certainly was pragmatic enough to bob and weave around her positions, as well as any sort of opprobrium she was asked to deliver in the direction of Jay Jones, the Attorney General candidate who sent all those texts wishing death upon his political opponents and their children. He managed to eke out a 1-point victory as well. But at the end of the day, for all the bloviation from pundits about the implications, these races are the home team heavily favored holding their own, winning at home as heavy favorites, as home favorites are wont to do. So what this means for the shutdown, what it means for the midterms, I think the extrapolation is a little overwrought. It's much more interesting to me, the schism within the Democrat Party, as represented by AOC, saying now everybody better wake up and make room for us because, and that's talking to you, Chuck Schumer, and any other old war horses, we're the party now. That's what she said on CNN last night. Whereas Mark Penn, former Hillary Clinton pollster, had this to say about the results in New York City.
Well, I agree with them. Essentially, what's happened here is the DSA has glommed onto the Democratic Party and said, hey, we're Democrats. And unfortunately, the DNC leadership has said, sure, come on in. Right. Doesn't really matter if you believe things that are completely antithetical to core Democratic principles. We're welcoming you if you win elections. I think that's a crazy position for a party. It's ultimately fundamentally destructive. I always remind people that in 1972 and 1984, the Democratic Party managed to reduce itself to a single state, and we could be headed for another wave. I mean, look, we see what happened in Chicago. There was a clear choice. They chose the candidate farther to the left, and now the entire city is in an uproar because of the results that they've gotten. These cities with these mayors are going to get worse results, and this I think trend has the real capability to take the party even further down, which, let's face it, it's out of power in all branches of government precisely because it's moved too far to the left.
Yeah, there's a blue wave, as Politico characterized it this morning. Blue wave in blue states. Okay. This celebration may be real premature because if New York City continues to trend in the direction of, say, Chicago, and Seattle and Mogadishu, Minnesota follow suit, then there may be a lot of unhappy metropolitan residents come November of 2026. For more on this, pleased to be joined by writer for the Wall Street Journal editorial page, Dan Henninger. Dan, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Dan.
What do you make of what Mark Penn had to say? Enjoy last night's victories for now, but there is a gathering storm.
Well, there's going to be a gathering competition, that's for sure. The Democratic Socialist, Ocasio-Cortez, and the rest of them, Mamdani, certainly are going to argue that the party is moving to the left. And to some extent, it has been moving to the left. Let's not forget that in the previous election, when Bernie Sanders, during the Democratic primaries, looked like he was going to win the nomination, the party moderates, Jim Clyburn in South Carolina, stepped in and anointed Joe Biden as the so-called centrist candidate who could win national elections. But Bernie's accomplishments were real. He was getting the same kind of votes, I would say, that Mamdani got yesterday. So that tranche of the Democratic Party is out there. It exists. Against that, though, Dan, you really do have to recognize the reality of Cheryl's win in New Jersey and Spanberger in Virginia. They did not run to the left. And these are basically blue states, as you said. But on the other hand, when you run at a larger electorate, not a specialized electorate like, say, Chicago's or New York City's, it looks as though Democrats do have to moderate their appeal somewhat. And that is going to be the argument, I think, inside the party as they go towards the midterm elections. They nominate candidates who are going to reflect democratic socialism, and in which case I think Mark Penn is right. They'll get their heads handed to them, or do they find a way to moderate? And the question during the midterms is going to be the one we have now. It's going to be affordability. Is it going to be whether inflation is still on people's minds? And it is indeed going to be the cost, I dare say, of Trump's tariffs.
Yeah, I want to get to the tariff case before the court today, oral arguments before the court today. But just on the Spanberger and Cheryl running as moderates with a lot of help from the media calling them moderates, you're right in terms of the market position. But then it seems to me the challenge is, and I thought Chitterelli did a pretty good job of it, the challenge is to actually expose the record and this relatively transparent flim-flam, which is I govern with the DSA in terms of the policy positions I take, and you look at Spanberger and Cheryl's record, it hardly mirrors John Fetterman. And then I run as a moderate in these larger, I mean, not congressional districts maybe as necessary, but certainly swing districts as well as elections. Then I'm going to run that way. And so Republicans have a job ahead of them, which is to make sure that you don't get away being one person in D.C., for example, or in a state house, and another person when you're presenting yourself for a higher office.
Yeah, that should be the case. I think overwhelmingly what happened here is that Democrats came home. In New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill got 81% of her party's 2024 vote, while Chitterelli only got 70% of Trump's tally in New Jersey that year. So Democrats were moving into their party, and it's just impossible for me, Dan, to avoid the reality of the one person in American politics who is always there, and that's Donald Trump. Trump did very well in New Jersey 4 years ago or 2 years ago, and his approval rating in New Jersey is now 42%. Chitterelli got 43%. Trump's approval in Virginia is 39%, and Earl Sears got 42%. A lot of Democrats felt they had an opportunity here after what they've been through with the Trump presidency to vote against Trump. And the Democratic candidates, I think, benefited from that. And to my mind, Dan, there is a question now for the Republican Party of whether it consists of a one-man show in Donald Trump, or whether there is something else beyond Trump that Republican candidates are going to have to think about. Trump has accomplished a lot. He's a major figure in Republican politics. But the reality is he draws all attention to himself, to one person. And I'm just raising the question of whether the broader Republican Party's image and brand has been diminished somewhat as a result of the Trump-centric focus this past year.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I said something earlier in the show that I'll repeat, but I saw Trump's post on Truth Social that, explaining the losses in New Jersey and Virginia, but I think particularly New Jersey, where he weighed in more heavily for Chitterelli, is, Trump wasn't on the ballot. Well, that is that's not something to celebrate. That's something to be critical of. He shouldn't be saying, well, so it's not my fault. What he should, I mean, because all you're doing then is you're saying, I'm Obama. I'm good at getting myself elected and nobody else. And so what is that? That to me seems to be what the rethinking needs to be. There's no question with the numbers, the approval ratings, as you said, he becomes a bit of an albatross around statewide candidates there. It's tough to separate yourself from the highest profile person in your party, and particularly when there's not a lot of separation on the underlying issues and it's so much just about personality. But I mean, between, the Republican candidates at the state level and Trump at the national level. But this idea, like, I have no responsibility when people lose because people didn't come out because I'm not on the ballot. Well, right. So what are you doing to get your people out for candidates down ballot? Don't you want to win those races?
Yeah, that's right. And that's going to be the name of the game in the midterm elections. The Democrats now have got to be feeling pretty good about the possibility of taking back the House, especially through swing districts. And Trump's presidency, at least on the domestic side, pretty much will be over if he loses control of Congress. So I think he's got to, I don't know, it's hard to suggest that Trump should do anything because it pretty much runs everything through his own personality. But it's really obvious that this party has got to have more of a sense of a public brand than just Trump. It does not look like it's going to be enough in states that are going to be, or districts that are going to be in play in the midterms next year.
Although the flip side of that is the evasive action that Trump is taking and instigating, which is all these redistricting efforts in red states. And obviously, after Prop 50 in California passing yesterday, there'll be one in California. But if all those if the red states that Trump wants to redistrict go the way of Texas, then that should be a net positive for Republicans. And that's one thing you can do to sort of change the balance of power on the map.
It could. We'll see how that works out. What California has just done is really quite gross. It looks like Darrell Issa, an excellent Republican congressman, is being redistricted out of his seat. Republicans will pay a price for that. Issa is a good spokesman for his party. So it's going to be interesting. I think, the issue that was at the center of this, as you mentioned, Dan, was affordability. And affordability cuts both ways. Zoran Mamdani won on affordability. But looking at what Mamdani intends to do, one may conclude that affordability in New York City is only going to get worse. That candidate, Mamdani, was very much the kind of mirror image of Brandon Johnson in Chicago. Mamdani is a union guy, fundamentally. The teachers' unions, the healthcare unions, they're the ones who are going to be running this city, and indeed the construction unions. Costs in New York are not going to go down. They're going to go up. And Mamdani is the one who's going to have to bear responsibility for that. So, the question of people's expenses could cut both ways when we get to the midterms, when you've got a highly visible public official like Zoran Mamdani presiding over a city whose cost of living is undoubtedly going to get worse.
If just moving to that Supreme Court case, oral arguments on the tariff case today, if, as many expect, at least some of what Trump has done unilaterally with tariffs is struck down by the court, do you get the sense that House and Senate Republicans are ready to move to sort of backfill legislatively what Trump had done through executive action to sort of ensure seamlessness here?
I don't know whether it will be quite the seamlessness, Dan. My guess is that what you're suggesting is right. This is going to be ultimately a very Solomonic decision by the Supreme Court. I don't think even the conservative justices are going to ratify every tariff that Trump has attempted under this Emergency Powers Act. Some of these reciprocal tariffs, which he has done in the name of the deficit being an emergency, I don't think those are going to be upheld. On the other hand, some related to the drug scourge, which could arguably be called an emergency, that might fall under the purview of the act that he's been citing to defend his tariffs. This Supreme Court has, in many cases, insisted, at least the conservatives have, that Congress be clear about its intentions when writing the laws, that Congress, which is in a state of dysfunction now, has to step forward and reassert its proper role in the political balance in this country. And I think that is probably what they're going to tell Congress to do ultimately when they decide this case. And whether Congress will be able to do that as currently constituted and do it quickly, by the way, remains to be seen. But I don't think you're going to see the Republicans in Congress simply write something that gives the presidency the limitless powers that Trump was claiming under this tariff regime.
Dan Henninger is a writer for the Wall Street Journal's editorial page. Dan, thank you as always. Appreciate your time.
Great to talk to you, Dan. Bye-bye.
You too. You too. And Dan Henninger joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer.
Let me take a moment to talk about my friends at QC Kinetics. They're helping so many listeners regain their mobility free from joint pain. Does this sound like you? Where every time you move, it's a reminder of what hurts? A reminder of how far you've drifted from the life you once had? Well, relief is closer than you think, and it doesn't have to come from surgery.